Moving on, the next thing that we're going to look at is the use of actual scenes within Flash. This is a feature that has been downgraded, somewhat hidden, and is being discouraged as a tool within Flash. There's pros and cons to utilizing what are called scenes in Flash. Scenes allow you to break up your animation timeline into a series of individual scenes. They're nice because it gives you kind of a fresh slate to start with again, because currently I have 3 layers, and if I were being more organized, I would of course name these layers, so I should type text in on those layers and give them names, but I haven't done that yet. And if I look here, I can see that I am currently on scene 1. Well, there is a scene palette that you can access, and it's under Window, Other Panels, Scene. So as you can see, they're kind of hiding it. They don't want you to find it anymore. It used to be prevalent and easy to find, but now they don't want it. And there's some reasons why you don't want to do it. When you are building interactivity within Flash and using coding to move through the timeline, scenes suck. They cause no end of heartache. When you are trying to have a continuous flowing soundtrack, audio running through your whole project, so one audio piece, one song, one background loop that occupies your whole project, scenes don't work. So they have to be used in the right context. In the right context, they work really well. From an animation development standpoint, they're awesome because I get to essentially start my layers back at 0, or start with just a single layer for the new scene, lay out all my elements, and it works out nice because on big projects with multiple characters, each character occupying say 20 to 30 layers a piece, if you have 5 characters on screen plus all your background artwork, that gets to be pretty substantial in terms of the number of layers. Now, layer folders can be used as a tool to help organize them, and that works out pretty well. But scenes are nicer from an organizational standpoint, but they suck when it comes to trying to line up and position all of your audio. So I show scenes because otherwise people find them, and then I get all this email in the middle of the night where someone started using scenes and their project doesn't work and they can't figure it out. So it's worth showing them. And then you can make an informed decision of whether you want to use scenes or not. If you're doing purely an animation-based project, I would use scenes. I would actually then put in placeholder audio, and then I would export all of my artwork out of Flash into a video editor, and then I would put the audio in using the video editor instead of putting audio in Flash. If I was doing a pure animation-based project, that is what I would do. But if I'm doing anything involving any type of interactivity, then I will keep it in Flash and I won't use scenes. Scenes are nice, but they do have drawbacks, so you have to be aware of that. So it comes up in my scene panel here. I can see that it says, hey, look, there's scene 1. And we can check in right here and see, yep, there's scene 1. If I want to add a new scene, all I have to do is click this button. It adds a new scene. And now that scene is scene 2, and we can see scene 1, scene 2. You can also see my layers down here at the bottom have changed. Now I'm back to layer 1. I don't have those other layers. That artwork disappeared. So now I'm starting over. So with that, I can decide how I want to organize things. So now if I wanted to have something here, scene 2, and put that up, we can see that if this stretches out, I'll just stretch it out for a few seconds here, or for a second. So it stretches out, so now scene 2 runs for 1 second. If I go back to scene 1, we can see there's scene 1, it's still there, there's scene 2. If I go and test my movie, we get to watch the title, we get to watch the name, then that will disappear, and now we move on to scene 2. And it shows up for a second because that's how long we've allocated. Now, what's nice in the scene panel is I can work on scenes, and I can even reorganize the sequence of the scenes just by dragging. So I can just drag those scenes up or down as I want. If I double click on it, I can rename it. So instead of scene 2, I can call this intro scene, for lack of a better name. So now it's intro scene. But if it were here at the beginning, I run my movie, we see that now starts out first, and then we move to it. So it is a nice way to organize things. And some people really like using scenes, some people don't. From an organizational standpoint of setting things up, it can be a really nice way to work on creating your artwork and getting things in place. Now, here this isn't too useful. What would be more useful is if now I go and create some artwork and draw myself a sky, and then maybe on top of the sky I'm going to then put in some ground. Dreaming of spring, so I'll put in green, so it's like green grass occurring there. And then maybe there's some trees, so then I need to create a tree. And once I have my trunk of my tree, because then, again, dreaming of springtime, so then I will need to put in some leaves here. So now I'll start out and create some foliage on this tree. Start to flesh it out, and then maybe just add some little highlights to make it a little bit richer. Okay, so now a tree has been created. Can lock those first two layers, so it's very easy to then, whoop, didn't mean to do that, meant to switch tools. Select that, convert my tree into a symbol. So what we're going to do is I'm going to build the second scene here, and then I'm going to show you how you could develop using scenes so you have a little more organized timeline, and then how to get the content from this scene all into that one first scene. So then you can then create your artwork in separate scenes, but then put it all together into a finished, completed thing. So we'll look at doing that as part of this morning. So now I have this tree, and what I want to do is have more than one tree, because I am really hoping springtime will be coming soon, and I can just option drag these trees and move them around on screen. So I'm going to go hide my scene palette there. So now if I have these trees, I want this tree to be on top because it's the one that's most in front, so I can go right click and choose bring to front under arrange. So right click arrange bring to front, which is also going to be accessible under the modify arrange pull down menu. We can see it's there, and we do have keyboard shortcuts, so option shift up arrow will do the same thing. So if I have this tree here, now this tree, if I want to put it in the background, I'm going to go and modify its brightness a little bit and just tone it down a little bit. So actually, instead of doing that, we're going to tint it and just give it a little bit of a bluish tint to start to add in what would be a little bit of atmospheric perspective. So the colors become a little bit blue, showing the blue moisture of the sky, so that it starts to create that illusion of space. Now this tree, so this one's going to be the most rear tree, then I can shrink it down just using free transform tool. Oh, wrong button there. I meant to hit shift and I hit enter, so if you watch the video afterward, you'll see it's slightly confused on that piece. And now this one I can do the same thing with tint, maybe not quite as much, and the same thing here as well. Just a hint of tint. And then this tree, shrink that down. So I can now create these trees, put them on screen, and get this nice illusion of space that's occurring. If I go into my scene, I still want my title sequence first, so I'm going to reorganize those again. So now I have my trees. Now what I don't have is I never bothered to create the guide that shows me the edges of it. So to rehash what we looked at doing previously last week, a very useful thing to do is to say no fill. I typically use red, 1 pixel, draw a box like that, select it, position it 0, 0, make it the correct width, correct height, and now that box sits on screen, so that shows me exactly where everything is. And if I double click on the layer, it comes up and I can now say this is a guide layer. Otherwise, I could right-click on it and achieve the same result. So it's a guide layer, meaning it won't show up in the finished published movie, but it does allow me to see it. I lock it, and now we can see there is my scene. Now, what would be nice to do with this scene and with these trees is to maybe select all of these trees here, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit and then make a second batch of trees, and I will want to select just the 4 front ones and modify a range and say bring the front to make sure they sit in front of the ones in the back. Probably should check each tree so that as things move I don't have any problems, but at least now that I've put these trees here like this, and it must be, I probably could put like some nice white flowers on here, because then they start to look like apple trees, and then be the apple blossoms in the spring and coming in. Again, I'm really trying to think these warm thoughts because winter has just gotten a little bit too long. The ski hills all shut down yesterday, last day that any of the ski hills were open. So now I officially can set my mind onto, I want things to be warm, I want the lakes to melt so I can start water skiing instead of snow skiing. But if I select all of my trees here, what I can do is I can then convert that into my tree group symbol. And once it's my tree group symbol, then at that point I can right-click, create motion tween, and we'll bring those trees in. Now I know I want that to be a much slower kind of animation. And now at that point I can highlight in the timeline, hit F5, stretch those things out so we can see. Okay, so there we have, the trees are coming into the season. And if I test the movie, title sequence, part 2 of it fades out. Now the trees come in as we're panning our camera across this nice idyllic landscape. And now after that, it's time to add something else to the movie, which we will look at next.